Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
I had always been pretty good at keeping my little hobby under wraps. From a young age, I'd managed to stay under the radar, slipping through life unnoticed. But now, finally out on my own for the first time since high school, I was determined to make the most of my newfound freedom. Over the years, I secretly built up a collection of clothes, jewelry, little treasures, and as I unpacked them in my new place, I felt something stirring inside me. A quiet resolve. I wanted to do better, to be better. With no sisters to guide me, just my cousin Joyce and my mother who, at 50-something, wasn't exactly the style icon I aspired to. I knew this journey would be mine alone. Time to experiment, time to take chances. I'm Brian, 21 years old, standing at 5'6" and weighing in at a lean 131 pounds. Brown eyes, sandy brown hair, and working my way up the retail ladder as a management trainee at a local department store. Not exactly the dream job, but it paid the bills. I had a car, a couple of years old, and a modest $1,200 tucked away in the bank. My wardrobe: 2 skirts, 3 blouses, 1 solitary pair of shoes, and a handful of jewelry. My furniture screamed early attic, a fancy way of saying I was just scraping by. But it was a start, a shaky, uncertain start, but a start nonetheless. I was in the middle of unpacking when Joyce dropped by. We were close, just a few months apart, with me holding the seniority card. And let's be real, she was a knockout. Brown hair cropped into a cute pixie cut, wide-set eyes that could melt stone, and a killer figure. 36 to 24, 36, if anyone's counting, with legs that just didn't quit. And she knew it, always showing them off in short skirts that hugged her narrow waist. "Hey, Brian, thought you might need a hand with all this unpacking." I smiled, trying to play it cool. "Thanks, but I got it covered." Her grin widened. "Even your girl stuff." My heart froze. The air seemed to thicken around me. "You didn't really think we didn't know, did you?" The shock must have been written all over my face, clear as day. "You didn't," I stammered. "You didn't know I—" "Oh, come on. Of course I knew. You like dressing up. And guess what? It's fine." I sat down hard on the bed, feeling my pride deflate like a punctured balloon. Joyce slid in beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Listen, if you told me sooner, I would have helped. I always wanted a sister, you know." My mind whirled. Was this real? A dream? All I had to do was say yes, and I'd have a partner in crime. But fear, that old familiar foe, kept me silent. Joyce smiled, sensing my hesitation. "It's okay, Brian. Let's finish unpacking, yeah?" By the time we were done, I'd made a pot of coffee, and we sat across from each other at the little kitchen table. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'll be back," she said. "Today's Thursday. Saturday morning, I'll be here, and by dinner, you'll be dolled up and ready to hit the town." And just like that, the door had been flung wide open. All I had to do was step through. Joyce left me alone with my thoughts, and let me tell you, they ran wild. All through the next day at work, my mind was a whirlwind of possibilities. What was she planning? How far was this going to go? By the time I finally got home, I was a mess, an excited mess, but a mess nonetheless. Sleep didn't come easy that night. My imagination kept showing me glimpses of a version of myself I had only dared to dream about. And now that dream was about to become reality. Morning came, and there I was, clutching a cup of coffee when Joyce waltzed in, arms full of bags that looked suspiciously promising. I helped her bring them inside, and as we settled down with our coffee, she laid it all out. "There's a party tonight," she announced, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "It's the grand opening of that new dance place on Beaker. And guess what? We're going. You, of course, as my sister Britney." I must have looked like I'd been hit by a truck, but before I could protest, she added, "It's a good name for you." What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Britney was the very name I had chosen for myself. Fate, it seemed, had a sense of humor. "Finish your coffee, and then we start." but you have to do exactly as I say." I nodded, my pulse quickening, and before I knew it, I was standing in nothing but my briefs as Joyce smeared a thick, goopy hair remover across my skin, not missing a single inch. The sensation was strange, cool, and tingly, but mostly, it was embarrassing. "Go soak in the bath, take those off, and finish the job. And I mean everything." I swallowed hard and did as I was told, stepping into the warm water and feeling the odd, prickly sensation as the cream did its thing. 30 minutes of waiting and a full rinse later, the water swirling around me carried away every last trace of hair. I stared at my reflection, smooth, bare, and feeling as exposed as the day I was born. With a deep breath, I washed my hair, shaved as close as possible, and finally wrapped myself in a towel before stepping into the bedroom. Joyce was waiting, looking smug and holding up something silky. "Since we're about the same size, I brought a few things to get you started." She handed me a pair of black nylon panties, brand new, the fabric delicate and shimmering. "Put these on, I'll turn around." I hesitated for half a second before slipping them on, feeling a thrill surge through me the moment they slid into place. The sensation was electric, unlike anything I had ever felt before. I tucked myself as best as I could, took a steadying breath, and told her I was ready. Next came the waist cincher, also in sleek black. I fastened the hooks and could feel my waist shrinking little by little, but when I pulled up the zipper, it gripped me tight, sculpting my figure in a way I had only imagined. The final touch, a brand new pair of pantyhose. I pulled them on carefully, feeling the soft stretch of the fabric against my freshly smooth skin, enjoying every inch as they settled into place. Joyce stepped back, a satisfied smile on her lips. "Now, let's see what we can do with that hair of yours." I followed her to the bathroom and sat down as she went to work with a curling iron and a blow dryer. My hair, cut into a tapered style that could easily swing either way, was teased and styled into something surprisingly feminine. In fact, some of the women at work had even pointed out how close my cut was to theirs. Joyce used clippers to neaten up the back and sealed it all with a generous spritz of hairspray. "That's the best I can do for now," she said, stepping back to admire her work. "We'll get a professional to handle it properly later." And just like that, I was inching closer to becoming the woman I had always imagined. Joyce had a knack for makeup, a true artist with a brush, and I watched in the mirror as she worked her magic. She started with foundation, blending it seamlessly with her fingertips until my skin was a flawless canvas, even and smooth. A dusting of powder followed. Then came the eyeshadow, a dreamy mix of soft rose and cool grey, expertly blended to create depth. A gentle stroke of brown eyeliner, a touch of pencil to define, and a whisper of pink blush to bring some life back to my cheeks. "Let's get a brow on you," she said, handing me a delicate piece of lingerie. I slipped it on, noticing right away that it was smaller than what I usually wore in secret. But as I fastened the front hook, I felt my chest being gathered into the snug little cups, the built-in push-up pads working their magic. And just like that, I had breasts. Not much, but enough to make me smile. Joyce, ever the perfectionist, handed me 2 small foam pads to tuck beneath, and suddenly, my chest filled out beautifully, rounding in a way I'd never achieved before. Next came the dress. It felt like little more than a whisper of fabric as I pulled it over my head, settling it over my newfound curve. Joyce zipped it up, and I gasped. This was way shorter than anything I would have dared to buy for myself. A sleek blue sheath, hugging me in all the right places, cinched with a gold hoop chain belt that shimmered under the light. She eyed my feet with disapproval before handing me my worn-out shoes. "These are done for, Britney. We'll fix that soon, but for now, put them on." I thought I was finally ready, but Joyce had other plans. From her purse, she pulled out a pair of clit-on earrings, a delicate bracelet, and a thin gold chain necklace. She fastened them around me with a satisfied smile before spritzing me with her perfume, light, floral, and unmistakably feminine. "Now put some lipstick on, and then we can go." I froze. "Go? Go where?" She grinned. "Shopping, of course. What else? You need shoes, panties, and at least a couple of proper bras to start with. A few dresses and skirts wouldn't hurt either, and of course some jewelry. She handed me a sleek black purse. "Put your wallet in here, then go put some lipstick on." I stood in front of the mirror, and for the first time, I saw her Britney. The resemblance to Joyce was uncanny. We could have been twins. Our short haircuts mirrored each other perfectly, and we were dressed almost identically. My fingers trembled slightly as I traced my lips with the soft rose lipstick, the final touch to complete the picture. Stepping out of my apartment felt like stepping off a cliff. Every step across the parking lot felt like a spotlight was on me, and I was convinced everyone could see right through me. But no one stared. No one whispered. Slowly, I started to relax just a little. By the time we reached the mall, I was breathing normally again. That is, until Joyce turned to me with a reassuring smile. "Now, Britney, you know this is what you want. Just get out of the car, and let's have a fun day shopping." And with that, the moment of truth had arrived. I followed Joyce into the mall, matching her stride as we strolled past the glittering store windows. The excitement buzzed in my veins, but nerves still clung to me like a second skin. Before I could overthink it, she hooked her arm through mine and veered us into a shoe store. I tried on pair after pair, feeling like Cinderella at the ball, until I settled on two, one black, one nude. I slipped into the black ones right there in the store, feeling a little thrill as the sleek heels clicked against the tile floor. Then came the real test. Joyce led me straight to the department store where I worked. My heart hammered against my ribs, my feet rooted to the floor. She noticed, of course, and with a reassuring squeeze of my arm, she pulled me forward. Before I knew it, I was standing in the women's department, stepping into skirts and dresses under the bright, unforgiving store lights. Terror sat heavy in my stomach, but Joyce? She was cool as ever, sifting through racks like this was just another shopping trip. I ended up buying a dress almost identical to the one I was wearing, classic shirtwaist style, perfect for blending in. 3 skirts and 5 blouses later, I was holding more bags than I ever had in my life. But Joyce wasn't done. Next stop, the jewelry store. "You should get your ears pierced," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Before I could protest, I was sitting in a chair with a piercing gun clicking next to my ear. A sharp pinch and a flash of warmth later, and I had my very first pair of real earrings. It felt right. We picked out bracelets and necklaces, and soon I was weighed down with bags, but loving every second of it. The makeup store was next. This time, I actually asked for a makeover. Sitting in that chair under the beauty lights, I watched in awe as the makeup artist worked her magic. She used colors and techniques that transformed me in ways I hadn't thought possible. When she spun me toward the mirror, my reflection stunned me. I looked even better than I had that morning, which I didn't think was possible. Naturally, I bought everything she used, stuffing more goodies into my growing collection. Lunch was a surreal experience. Sitting in a food court, sipping iced tea, I watched co-workers stroll past people I saw every day. Not one of them batted an eye in my direction. They had no idea. That eerie realization sent a shiver down my spine. I wasn't just passing, I was living. "One last thing," Joyce said, finishing her drink. "Then we can head home and get ready." "What else could there possibly be?" I asked, half laughing. "Your hair." Before I could object, she had me by the arm, leading me into a salon. A stylist worked wonders, shaping my hair into a more polished, feminine-style soft layers and just enough length to tuck behind my ears. It was styled to swing both ways, able to work for my everyday male persona, but easily styled into Britney with a bit of effort. While I sat in the chair, Joyce slipped away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. By the time she returned, I was ready to go, and we finally made our way home. The moment I stepped through my apartment door, I let out a long breath of relief. The day had been exhilarating, terrifying, and absolutely unforgettable. For my first real outing as Britney, I had nailed it. It was barely 3 in the afternoon, and Joyce left to get ready, promising to be back by 6. That gave me time to revel in the day's success, time to try on every piece of clothing I'd bought, and time to stand in front of the mirror, lost in the reflection of my inner vision brought to life. Stripping down to my bra and panties, I washed off my makeup and shaved again, just to be sure. With each sweep of the razor, the old me faded further, replaced by the emerging Britney. I practiced my makeup twice, watching my reflection with growing confidence, until I thought I could do a decent job on my own. I was just about to start my third attempt when Joyce walked in, catching me mid-stroke. "Go ahead, Britney," she said, leaning against the doorframe with an approving smile. "Let's see what you've got." I took a deep breath and got to work. Foundation first, smoothing it out with steady hands. Then eyeshadow soft blue as a base, a sweep of plum for depth, and a touch of grey to blend it all together. I used the sponge just like the makeup artist had shown me, blending everything to perfection. The eyeliner came next, deep sable black tracing the shape of my eyes, adding a hint of drama. With a steady hand, I followed with a black pencil under my lower lash line, carefully smudging it to soften the look. Mascara was the hardest part, each stroke lengthening my lashes until they framed my eyes in a way that made my heart skip a beat. A touch of rose blush to my cheeks, blended to perfection, and I turned to Joyce with a hopeful smile. "Very nice," she said, clapping her hands. "You learn quick." Hearing her say that, seeing the pride in her eyes, it was everything I had hoped for. Back in my bedroom, Joyce perched comfortably on the bed, watching with a knowing smile as I slipped my new red dress over my head. The fabric felt like liquid fire against my skin, having every curve just right, flaring delicately at my corseted waist, and stopping daringly about 3 inches above my knees. I swallowed hard, feeling more exposed than ever, but Joyce was already behind me, zipping me up without hesitation. I reached up to replace my simple studs with the gold hoops she handed me, their weight a pleasant reminder of the transformation I was stepping into. The dress, with its low round neckline and short sleeves, called for accessories, and Joyce knew just the thing. She handed me a gold-trimmed watch, slipping it onto my wrist with a finality that made my pulse quicken. A choker-style gold necklace followed, sitting elegantly just above the dress's neckline. Then came the red patent leather shoes ankle straps fastening with a soft click, and suddenly, I wasn't just wearing a dress. I was wearing an identity. "Before we go any further, let's do your nails," Britney, Joyce said, leading me to the kitchen table. I watched, fascinated, as she filed and shaped a set of fake nails, pressing them onto my fingers with practiced ease. 2 coats of bright red polish later, and I was mesmerized by my own hands, the color bold and unapologetically feminine. We sat in silence, waiting for the polish to dry, and I felt the weight of what I was about to do settle into my bones. Joyce broke the silence with her usual confidence. "If you watch how you sit and walk, your mannerisms, be demure. Nobody will ever guess, Britney. And I'm not telling a soul, so relax and enjoy yourself tonight." "Easy for you to say," I muttered. "If a guy wants to dance with you, you can just say yes. Me? I'll be sitting on the sidelines watching. And what if some guy actually hits on us?" Joyce laughed, the sound light and full of mischief. "So what? Let them. There's no reason you can't dance, drink, or do anything else. Honestly, Britney, you look better than half the girls I know." Once my nails had dried, I added the finishing touches: rings, a red purse that now held my essentials, my newly transferred female wallet, a brush, a mirror, lipstick, and tissues. Standing beside Joyce in the mirror, the resemblance was striking. With our matching red dresses, hers a touch shorter and more revealing, we were practically twins. The thought thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. The walk to Beaker Street Place felt like an eternity, each step across the pavement amplifying my nerves. But with Joyce's steady presence beside me, I pushed through. The line outside the club wasn't long, and soon we were seated at a table near the dance floor. I expected eyes to linger, whispers to follow in my wake, but to my surprise, nobody gave me so much as a second glance except the guys, who were definitely interested. When the waiter came by, I instinctively went for the steak, but Joyce intervened with a stern look. "Wait is a girl's worst enemy, Britney," she warned, nudging me toward a fish dinner with salad, coffee, and absolutely no dessert. I sighed, resigning myself to the new reality. The band kicked off with soft rock, filling the room with an electric hum of excitement. Before I could settle into my chair, a guy approached and asked me to dance. I opened my mouth to refuse, panic rising, but one look from Joyce told me I had no choice. Taking a deep breath, I slipped my hand into his and let him lead me onto the dance floor. The moment he pulled me close, my whole body tensed. The feel of a man's arms around me, guiding me effortlessly across the floor, was unnerving to say the least. But as the music flowed, I found myself adapting, following his lead with surprising ease. His name was Andrew, and he was charming, if a little too eager. I managed small talk, enough to get by, and when we returned to our table, Joyce leaned in with a teasing grin. "Ladies' room break," she announced, and I followed, feeling the surreal rush of stepping into the women's restroom for the first time. Once inside, Joyce smirked. "That guy you're dancing with has stars in his eyes, Britney. I'll bet he asks to take you home." "No way," I blurted, my heart pounding. Joyce just laughed. "We'll see. If my guy asks me, I might say yes. And if yours does, well, you might have to. We'll figure it out later." I stared at her, horrified. This was my first time out, and Joyce was already plotting ways to get me into trouble. What had I gotten myself into? As it turned out, Joyce Guy did ask if he could take her home, and while she declined, she casually mentioned that we'd both be free for lunch the next day. Just like that, our little adventure had extended into another round. Andrew, ever the gentleman or perhaps not so much, walked me to the car, his arms snugly wrapped around my waist the entire way. The weight of it, the possessiveness, sent a flurry of emotions through me. I knew it was coming, and oddly enough, I didn't find myself resisting the idea. When he pulled me in and kissed me, his tongue boldly exploring my mouth, I felt a dizzying mix of excitement and disbelief. His hand, wandering lower than I expected, sent a thrill through me that left me breathless when he finally pulled away. Joyce, always the observer, smirked knowingly. That was some kiss, Britney. He'll be back, trust me. And somehow, deep down, I knew she was right. The bigger question was, why didn't I mind? Back home, safe within my four walls, I undressed slowly in front of the mirror, savoring every step. Peeling away each layer, I admired the way the dress had hugged me, the way I'd carried myself, the way I had felt. Washing off my makeup, I slipped into bed, my mind swirling with images of the night, replaying every moment with a mixture of exhilaration and uncertainty. Morning came, and with it an undeniable eagerness. I wasn't ready to let go of Britney just yet. Showering and shaving meticulously, I applied my makeup, keeping it softer this time. A light foundation, a dusting of powder, soft brown eyeliner, and a hint of blusher. Enough to feel polished, but not overdone. Sliding into a fresh pair of lace-trimmed white panties and a matching bra, I carefully placed the small foam pads, adding just the right amount of fullness. My pantyhose smoothed over my legs effortlessly, and I reached for the white shirtwaist dress with the floral print, cinching the belt just enough to enhance my waist. The white flats felt practical yet dainty, and with breakfast on my mind, I left my hair for later. After a quick meal, I tackled the curling iron, struggling through a few attempts before finally achieving something close to what the stylist had done. Button earrings, a gold and white necklace, and a matching bracelet completed the look. A touch of pale rose lipstick, a spritz of perfume, and I felt ready. Ready for what exactly? I wasn't sure. Joyce called right at noon, her voice brimming with excitement. "Are you dressed?" "Yes," I said, nerves creeping back. "Good, because the guys are at my place and we're heading over." My heart skipped. They weren't wasting any time. The doorbell rang, and with a quick check around my apartment to make sure it was presentable, I opened the door. Andrew's smile was warm, his eyes scanning me with obvious appreciation. He leaned in and gave me a light peck on the cheek, the familiarity of it both thrilling and unnerving. "Nice place, Britney. You live here alone?" he asked, glancing around. I caught Joyce's gaze, but she left me to answer. "Yeah," I said, keeping it simple. "Just moved in." Fred, Joyce's guy, clapped his hands together. "Shall we?" Grabbing my purse, I followed them out to the car. Andrew and I took the front seats, and though he didn't touch me, I could feel the weight of his gaze. His eyes spoke louder than words, and I knew exactly where his thoughts were drifting. At the restaurant, just as I was settling in, I spotted Joyce's parents seated at a nearby table. Panic gripped me. Would they recognize me? Would they say something? But they only smiled, waved politely, and went back to their meal. I held my breath until Joyce gave me a small shake of her head, silently telling me to stay calm. Lunch passed in a blur of conversation and stolen glances. Joyce and Fred, clearly eager for some alone time, decided to drop Andrew and me off at my place, promising to return by 5 for dinner and a movie. And just like that, I was alone with him. The shift in energy was immediate. In the quiet of my apartment, the air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. I retreated to the kitchen under the pretense of making a snack, but Andrew followed, stepping in close and wrapping his arms around me from behind. I stiffened, opening my mouth to protest, but he turned me around swiftly, his lips finding mine before I could get the words out. I should have stopped him, but instead I melted. My arms found their way around his neck, and as his hands roamed, I found myself not resisting but leaning into his touch. He lifted me effortlessly, carrying me to the small couch where he placed me down gently, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse race. His hand, warm and firm, rested on my stomach before trailing upward, brushing over my chest. Despite the padding, the touch sent shivers down my spine, making me feel more feminine than I ever had before. My mind screamed at me to put a stop to it, to say something, anything, but my body refused to cooperate. Instead, I found myself staring at the growing bulge in his pants, the reality of the moment crashing over me like a wave. I was caught between two worlds, one I'd always known, and one I was just beginning to explore, and in that moment, I wasn't sure which one I wanted more. I hadn't realized how far I'd let myself go until I felt his hand guiding mine to him, pressing it firmly against the hardness beneath his pants. My fingers curled around him instinctively, and he shuddered at my touch. A thrill shot through me as I stroked him gently, my lips finding his in a kiss that felt far too natural. It was a first touching another man like this, but to my surprise, it wasn't unpleasant. In fact, I liked it. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that Brian would have been horrified by this, but Britney was different. Britney had a man, and Britney wanted to please him. The lines between who I was and who I was becoming blurred as he unzipped his pants, his manhood springing free right in front of me. My hesitation lasted only a moment before my hand reached out on its own, exploring him with newfound curiosity. "Kiss it," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. And I did. What happened next was something I never imagined myself doing, but as I surrendered to the moment, it wasn't nearly as strained as I thought it would be. If anything, it felt right. He enjoyed it, and oddly enough, so did I. Afterward, we sat side by side on the couch, watching television as if nothing had happened, exchanging occasional kisses that left me tingling. When Joyce and Fred finally returned, Joyce gave me a look, one of those knowing, mischievous smiles that told me she'd figured everything out without a word. "Come on, Britney," she said, pulling me into the bedroom with a smirk. "You were a bad girl, weren't you?" I blushed deeply, unable to deny it. "I probably didn't do as much as you did, Joyce, but then again you can, and I can't." Dinner and the show were a blur after that, my thoughts swirling with everything that had happened. But once I was back home, staring at my reflection in the mirror, I knew it was time to put Britney away for now. The next morning, I slipped the smallest gold studs into my ears, styled my hair into the more masculine look I needed for work, and sprayed it in place. Just like that, Brian was back. I went through the motions at my job in the men's department, but it was agonizing. The highlight of my days became the moment I stepped through my apartment door, slipping into a pair of panties and a bra, and lying in my robe until morning. It wasn't enough. What I really wanted was to be Britney every day, all day. But that wasn't an option. So I settled for stolen moments and whispered dreams. Joyce called a few times to check in, but we hadn't seen each other in 2 weeks. Andrew, on the other hand, called often. We'd spend hours talking, and every time I hung up, I felt a mix of excitement and longing I couldn't quite explain. Then, on Monday, things changed. I was transferred to parcels, a behind-the-scenes job where items were packed and shipped, far away from the bustling sales floor. Part of my training required me to ride along with the drivers to get a feel for deliveries, but what really caught my attention was the shelf in the back, stacked high with returned items. Curiosity got the better of me. What happens to all this stuff? I asked the dock chief. He shrugged. We toss it once the shelf is full, usually every month or so. Intrigued, I started digging through the boxes. Most of it was junk-stained clothes, broken appliances, things no one could resell. But then, in one of the boxes, I found them. A pair of perfectly formed breast forms, still pristine in their packaging. The box had been opened, and the label clearly stated they couldn't be resold once the seal was broken. My heart raced as I pulled them from the shelf and tucked them into my desk, waiting until the next day to take them home. I couldn't believe my luck. 36B, complete with adhesive strips that would let them stay in place without a bra. That night, I eagerly slipped them into my bra, and the weight of them, the way they moved with me, sent shivers down my spine. For the first time, I felt like I had real breasts. The shape, the softness, the way they pressed against me, it was intoxicating. I couldn't stop touching them, adjusting them, experimenting with how they looked under different clothes. The color was almost identical to my own skin tone, and with a little creative blending, I could hide the seams completely, meaning lower necklines were now an option. I was in heaven. I spent the next few days indulging in my new reality, slipping on dresses I'd previously been too shy to wear, marveling at the way the breast forms made me look and feel. Each night, I stood in front of the mirror, running my hands over my new silhouette, watching as Britney took center stage once more. Sitting in the store manager's office, I wasn't too concerned at first. Meetings with him weren't unheard of, though they usually happened on Fridays, not smack in the middle of the week. But the moment he started speaking, my pulse quickened. In every department you've worked in, we've seen an increase in sales, he said, his voice steady and firm. Your suggestions in parcels alone will save us nearly $300,000 over the next 3 years. Your work has been exemplary in every way. We're ready to promote you to run your own department, and upper management is fully on board. I stared at him stunned. Sure, I made a few suggestions here and there, but I never imagined they'd been taken so seriously. I was just trying to make things more efficient, not shake things up. Mrs. Gottlieb is retiring at the end of the month, he continued, and we believe you're the perfect fit to take over her role. You've proven yourself capable. But my throat felt tight. Isn't that position, the women's department? I mean, hasn't it always been held by a woman? The manager leaned back in his chair with an amused smile. Yes, it has. But I want you to watch something before you say anything else. He pressed play on a small television, and as the grainy video flickered to life, my stomach dropped. There I was, Britney, browsing through the women's department, casually selecting dresses, skirts, and accessories. I could feel my face heating up, my body sinking into the chair. My secret, laid bare on a screen for my boss to see. That's you, isn't it? He asked, not unkindly. I couldn't find my voice. Ashamed, embarrassed, every emotion I'd been running from came crushing down on me. But then he said something that made my heart pound for an entirely different reason. That's exactly why I've chosen you for this role. We've been struggling in that department. Missing merchandise, dishonest cashiers, outdated styles, and a manager who's lost control. Frankly, if Olivia weren't so close to retiring, I'd be letting her go. What I'm proposing, Brian, no, Britney, is that you take charge of the women's department as Britney. You clearly understand the products, the customers, and the fashion. You may look like a woman on the outside, but I need someone who can take aggressive action and turn this place around before the fall season. I was speechless. Words swam in my head, but nothing made it to my lips. My heart pounded in my chest, and if my throat hadn't been so dry, I might have choked out some sort of response. Tomorrow morning, he continued, I want you in my office at 8 a.m., ready to go to work as Britney. By the way, what name do you use? I swallowed hard. Britney. I use Britney. He nodded. I'll have a new badge ready for you in the morning. My secretary will update your personnel file. Go home and get some rest, you've got a big day ahead of you. I walked out of that office in a daze, unsure of how or why any of this had happened, but one thing was crystal clear: I'd be working as Britney starting tomorrow. At home, I flung open my closet, staring at my modest collection of clothes with a growing sense of panic. What I had barely covered evenings out with Joyce, let alone a full-time job. I needed enough outfits to last an entire work week at minimum. The realization hit hard, but for now, I had to work with what I had. The black pleated skirt suit with the rose-colored jacket would have to do for my first day. I laid it out carefully, along with a matching camisole, stockings, and my black heels. My undergarments lace-trimmed panties, a black bra, and of course my prized breast forms were set beside them. With a deep breath, I grabbed a bottle of hair remover and headed to the bathroom. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. It took longer than I thought, meticulously smoothing my skin and ensuring every inch was perfect. My nails followed next. I chose a soft plum polish, professional, understated, but still feminine. Each stroke of color felt like another step into my new reality. By the time I crawled into bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind raced with a million thoughts. Excitement, fear, anticipation. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just be dressing as Britney for a night out, I'd be Britney full-time. And if I was being honest with myself, that thought thrilled me more than anything. As I stepped into my new department, the reality of my position hit me like a wave. The women's department, my department, now stretched before me, racks of dresses, blouses, and accessories standing like sentinels, waiting for a firm hand to whip them into shape. Olivia was already packing up the last of her things, her expression a mixture of relief and something I couldn't quite place, perhaps a touch of amusement. Well, Britney, she said, smoothing her skirt as she looked me over, you've got your work cut out for you. These girls, they're a handful, but I suppose you'll figure it out. I gave her my most professional smile, though inside I felt a knot of anticipation tightening. I'm ready for the challenge, Olivia. Thank you for everything. She chuckled and patted my arm. You say that now. Give it a week. With that, she'd hoisted her purse over her shoulder and walked out, leaving me standing alone in my new domain. Taking a deep breath, I surveyed the space. The department felt cluttered, disorganized, and chaotic in a way that reflected exactly how it had been run. Displays were mismatched, sales signs crooked, and the energy of the floor just off. I knew right away that before I even thought about tackling the staff, I needed to get the department itself in order. One by one, the employees started filtering in for their shifts, and I greeted them each with a warm smile and a handshake, doing my best to radiate confidence. It was clear they weren't sure what to make of me yet, some skeptical, others curious. Kelly, the one Olivia had praised as a long-term employee, watched me with an air of quiet assessment. Marian, on the other hand, approached me with a wariness I recognized but appreciated. As the morning passed, I focused on observing, watching how the employees interacted, how they handled customers, and more importantly, how they didn't. I noticed Kelly spending more time chatting with customers than actually helping them, and Jenny, the high school co-op, seemed nervous and unsure of her role. Kelly moved around confidently, but something about the way she lingered by the register and occasionally glanced over her shoulder set off little alarms in my head. By noon, I had a mental list of improvements and a strategy forming. After a brief staff meeting where I introduced myself officially and set some basic expectations, I called Marian aside. If there was anyone who could give me the raw, unfiltered truth, it was her. I want to make things better around here, I told her quietly. But I need to know what's really going on behind the scenes. I heard rumors, but I want facts. Marian hesitated, chewing on her lip before finally nodding. All right, Britney. I'll tell you what I know. but you have to promise to keep me out of it. I don't need any drama." "You have my word," I assured her. She glanced around before lowering her voice. "Kelly's been here a long time, yeah, but she's got a side hustle, if you catch my drift. Stuff goes missing when she's on shift. And Donna, well, let's just say she doesn't exactly have a keen eye when it comes to catching it. Either she's too busy with her stories or she's turning a blind eye. Hard to say." I nodded, taking it all in. "Thank you, Marian. This stays between us." She gave me a wary smile. "Good luck, boss." As I watched her walk away, I felt the weight of my new responsibilities settle over me like a second skin. It wasn't just about looking the part anymore. I was the part. Britney wasn't just a fantasy now, she was the boss of this department, and it was time to prove that she could handle it. I straightened my blouse, smoothed down my skirt, and stepped onto the floor with purpose. It was time to show them all what Britney was really capable of. Taking over the department had been a whirlwind, but after sorting through the staff, setting up cameras, and catching Kelly in the act, I felt a newfound confidence settling into my bones. Firing her on the spot had been both nerve-wracking and exhilarating. Britney had authority, and I was reveling in it. Moving Jenny to parcels turned out to be the right call too. Without her struggling at the register, the cash flow smoothed out almost immediately. With things at work finally falling into place, I decided to treat myself. My Thursday off became a full-fledged shopping spree, my credit card taking hit after hit as I built up a wardrobe that finally reflected the life I was living. Britney wasn't just a weekend indulgence anymore, she was me, day in and day out. Trying on clothes in the dressing rooms felt second nature now, and the thrill of seeing myself in elegant dresses and stylish blouses no longer came with that anxious edge. Of course, with my new position came perks like getting the special adhesive tapes for my breast forms faster and with a sweet 20% discount. That little privilege alone made me smile every time I placed an order. I was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the plunging neckline of a sleek black evening gown, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Britney." I spun around to see Joyce standing there, her eyes wide, taking in a sight of me practically spilling out of the dress. The bodice hugged my chest so snugly that my breasts swelled over the cups, the fabric clinging to every inch of my form like a second skin. "You've changed," she blurted, and I could see the surprise and maybe a little admiration in her expression. I gave her a small, knowing smile. "Let me change, and we'll go grab a bite." Slipping back into my jeans and sweater, I joined her outside, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. I'd been keeping all of these changes under wraps, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal them. Over lunch, I spilled everything: how I was now Britney full-time, the promotion, Andrew's frequent calls, and how comfortable I had become in this life. Joyce just sat there, jaw slack, eyes blinking rapidly as she processed it all. "You mean to tell me you're always Britney now? Like, all the time?" I grinned, stirring my coffee. "That's right. And I've only seen Andrew once since that first night, but he calls me almost every night." She let out a low whistle, shaking her head in disbelief. "I'll be damned." I couldn't help but laugh at her reaction. It felt good to finally share everything with her, to see her taking it all in with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Later that evening, Joyce came over for dinner, and we curled up on my new couch, my little oasis of femininity in an otherwise unchanged apartment. I wore a soft pink blouse, something simple but undeniably Britney, and as we sipped wine and swapped stories, I realized how much of our conversation kept circling back to Andrew. His deep voice on the phone, the way he made me feel with just a simple touch, the way he talked about taking me out again soon. Joyce listened with a smirk that grew wider with every little confession, and it wasn't until after she left that I realized just how much he'd been on my mind. Lying in bed that night, running my fingers absent-mindedly over the lace of my bra, I couldn't help but wonder, was Britney just my career now, or was she starting to become something more? Sitting in my new office, I could hardly believe how far I had come in such a short time. 3 months ago, I was stepping into the women's department with a mix of nerves and excitement, unsure if I could truly pull this off. Now, I was not only succeeding but thriving so much so that the company had decided to invest in my vision. I glanced around the spacious office, complete with a sleek desk, a comfortable chair that practically screamed authority, and a view that overlooked the bustling store floor below. It was mine. All of it. And yet, the reality of it all hadn't quite sunk in. The meeting with Franklin had been a whirlwind. He'd come in with skepticism but left impressed, and for good reason. The numbers spoke for themselves. Sales were up, losses were down, and the women's department was finally becoming a place where customers wanted to shop. My ideas weren't just cosmetic. They were practical, driven by an understanding that came naturally to me, thanks to years of being a woman in my own way. And the biggest revelation, they wanted me to stay as Britney. Not only did they accept it, but they also encouraged it. I wasn't just blending in anymore. I was being recognized, respected, and rewarded. I smoothed down my mint green skirt, feeling the luxurious fabric against my legs. It was funny how natural this had all become, how the weight of my breast forms, the soft swish of my skirt, the gentle pinch of my heels all felt like second nature now. Even my hair, now styled into a sleek pageboy cut, framed my face just the way I liked it. There was no more hesitation when I reached for a tube of lipstick or adjusted my jewelry. Britney wasn't a role anymore, she was me. Marian stepped into my office with a nervous smile, clutching a clipboard. "Boss," she said, her voice carrying that hint of sarcasm she loved. "So, does this mean I'm running the show while you're off playing designer?" I grinned. "You bet. And I expect you to keep things running smoothly. No excuses." She chuckled. "I'll keep 'em in line. Don't you worry." Her eyes softened slightly. "You know, Britney, I never thought I'd see the day where someone like me gets a shot like this. Thanks for believing in me." I felt a lump in my throat, but kept my smile steady. "You earned it, Marian. Now don't make me regret it." After she left, I pulled out the project timeline and started going over the plans. The next few months would be a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and, inevitably, challenges. But I was ready for it. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to stop now. Later that evening, I met up with Joyce for dinner to share the news. She was already waiting at our favorite spot, her eyes lighting up as soon as I walked in. "All right, spill it," she said the moment I sat down. "You're practically glowing." I laughed, unable to contain my excitement. I got promoted, level 7, 80 grand a year, a company car, and they want me to stay as Britney full-time. Joyce's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Britney, that's amazing. I mean, I knew you were good, but I didn't think they'd." "Neither did I admitted, stirring my drink. "But they're backing my entire plan. I'll be working with architects and contractors to revamp the department from the ground up." Joyce leaned in with a grin. "So, what does this mean for you personally? I mean, you're basically living as Britney 24/7 now. Are you happy with that?" I paused, the question hanging in the air. "Yeah," I said softly. "I really am. It's not just a job anymore, Joyce. It feels right." She smiled knowingly. "I'm proud of you. And hey, does Andrew know about all this?" I shrugged. "We talk almost every night, but I haven't told him yet. I guess I'm still figuring things out." Joyce smirked. "Well, something tells me he'll be thrilled. You better brace yourself." We spent the rest of the evening laughing, celebrating, and of course, gossiping about my new position. As I walked back to my car, heels clicking confidently on the pavement, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't just dreaming anymore, I was living it. And I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take me next. Hearing Andrew's words felt like a weight lifting off my chest, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying for so long. I stared at him, completely speechless, my mind racing to catch up with the reality unfolding in front of me. All that fear, all those sleepless nights worrying about his reaction, and here he was calm, understanding, and still wanting me. "You've known this whole time?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled gently. "Yeah, Britney, but it didn't change how I felt about you. I enjoy being with you, not just the idea of you. And honestly, I was just waiting for you to tell me in your own time." I wiped away the tears that had begun to spill down my cheeks, a soft, incredulous laugh escaping me. I don't know what to say. I thought you'd walk out that door the second I told you. He leaned back, resting his hands behind his head. Well, I'm still here. And I'm still asking, are you coming with me to the condo, or what? I couldn't stop smiling, the rush of relief and happiness bubbling up inside me. Yeah, I'd love to. The next few days were a blur of preparation, excitement, and a nervous energy I couldn't quite shake. Joyce, of course, was thrilled when I told her everything. She smirked over coffee, nudging my arm. I told you, Britney. You've got yourself a good one there. Don't mess it up. I laughed, shaking my head. I still can't believe it. He's just okay with it all. Some people surprise you, she said. And hey, now that everything's out in the open, you can finally just be yourself around him. No more hiding. And she was right. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. The drive up to Andrew's condo was long but peaceful, the trees lining the road flashing by in shades of green and gold. Sitting in the passenger seat, dressed in my favorite sweater and jeans, I felt more confident than ever before. There was no more pretending, no more fear lurking beneath the surface. Andrew knew everything, and he was still here, still holding my hand, still calling me beautiful. When we arrived, his condo was everything I imagined it would be cozy, with big windows that looked out over the lake, and a fireplace that promised warmth and comfort on chilly nights. He poured us both a glass of wine, and we settled onto the couch, the tension that once lived between us now replaced by an easy, comforting silence. You know, he said after a while, his arm resting around my shoulders, I'm really glad you finally told me. It must have been exhausting carrying that secret around. I nodded, leaning into him. It was, but it's over now. And it was. Sitting there in the soft glow of the fire, with Andrew beside me and my life finally feeling like it was falling into place, I realized something. I wasn't just playing the role of Britney anymore. Britney was me, in every way that mattered. And the best part, I wasn't alone in it anymore. As I looked up at Andrew, I smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of something even better. Andrew and I spent that entire weekend wrapped in each other, exploring the depths of our love and discovering just how much we truly belonged together. There were no more doubts, no more fears, just us. He saw me for who I was, not just who I presented to the world, and in his arms, I felt something I had never known before, complete acceptance. We lay in bed long after the sun rose, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my bare back as he whispered sweet nothings into my ear, making me giggle and blush like a schoolgirl in love. When Joyce called the next day, I could hardly contain the joy in my voice. She listened patiently. With that knowing smirk I could practically hear through the phone. I told you, Britney, she teased. You're worth loving. I always knew it, you just needed to catch up. And she was right. It was something I had never let myself believe until now. The invitation to lunch with her parents made my stomach flutter with nervous anticipation, but her confidence in their acceptance soothed me. I chose my favorite afternoon dress, a soft floral number with a gentle swing to the skirt, and when I walked through their front door, I was met with open arms and warm smiles. Kelly and Hank welcomed me as if I had always been Britney, their kindness washing over me in waves of reassurance. Kelly's words made my heart swell. My mother had known. It was as if a missing piece of the puzzle had been quietly sitting there all along, waiting for me to find it. You have always been a part of our family, Kelly said softly, her hands holding mine tightly. Now, you just look the way you were meant to. The stoic figure I once feared would reject me proved to be the most surprising of all. He sat beside me, telling stories about my childhood, chuckling at memories I had long forgotten. It felt like coming home, to a place I didn't realize I had missed so much. And Joyce? She sat beside me, smiling as if she had known this day would come all along. As the days passed, my bond with Joyce grew stronger than ever. We shopped together, redecorated my apartment to truly reflect my personality, and shared late-night talks over wine, laughing until our sides ached. But with all the changes in my life, one thing became clear: Andrew and I were growing closer, and our future was something I could no longer ignore. Then, one evening, under the glow of the soft lighting in my apartment, Andrew knelt before me, his hands trembling just slightly. "Britney," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision, but my answer was immediate. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Joyce squealed with joy when I told her, practically demanding to be my maid of honor on the spot. Marion, my loyal friend and former employee, was equally thrilled to stand by my side as a bridesmaid. The wedding planning was a whirlwind of excitement, and as I stood in front of the mirror on my wedding day, dressed in a breathtaking ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves, I saw a woman I never imagined I could become a bride. The ceremony was intimate yet perfect. Andrew's eyes never left mine as we exchanged vows, his touch steady and reassuring as he slipped the ring onto my finger. When we kissed, I knew beyond any doubt that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Our honeymoon was a dream, a romantic getaway to a sun-drenched island where I could finally bask in the warmth of my new life without fear or doubt. As the years went on, my life as Britney flourished. I continued to thrive in my career, with the women's department becoming one of the store's top-performing sections. Joyce and I remained as close as sisters could be, and Andrew, he loved me more deeply with each passing day. But the biggest surprise of all came one spring morning when I walked into the office to find a letter waiting for me. It was from the corporate headquarters, an offer to become the regional manager for all women's departments in the entire chain. My hard work had not gone unnoticed, and now I was being given the opportunity of a lifetime. I ran my fingers over the crisp envelope, a slow smile spreading across my lips. If only that scared young person I used to be could see me now. Joyce burst into my office a moment later, eyeing the letter in my hands. "Well, what is it?" I grinned. "It's everything I ever dreamed of, Joyce." And it was. From a quiet longing hidden away in the back of my closet to standing tall in the world, fully embracing who I was, I had finally found my happiness. I had my career, my love, my family, and most importantly, I had me. Life has a funny way of unfolding, of leading us down paths we never expected, but I wouldn't change a thing. Because in the end, I realized something. I wasn't just living my dream, I was creating it.